All right, tell us about creating the dream team.
Well, that's step 3. Now, there may be a lot of smart people listening to this tape, and I'm sure there are, but I'm here to tell you can't do it alone. You cannot take quantum growth, quantum methodology, and grow your business and do it by yourself. You have to enlist the help of others. And the way I did it is that I found mentors, and I had 3 mentors, 2 of which are still alive. And I found somebody that was where I wanted to be already, that was significantly older, significantly more successful, and that and I made it my business to become the son they never wanted, perhaps. And I spent a lot of time with those 3 mentors. I've already mentioned Jim Newman. I had Jerry Orman, the founder of Orman Industries, which was a conglomerate on the American Stock Exchange in the oil business, and I had Konstantin Gratsos, who was the chief executive officer of Manassas Shipping Lines. I was privileged for those 3 men to take an interest in me. 2 of the gentlemen, Mr. Newman and Mr. Orman, are still alive and semi-retired, and they still take an interest in me. So that's the beginning of the dream team. The second thing is that most of us are not dealing with banks or financial institutions that can take us to the next level. Most of you have what I call deposit relationships. You don't have a banking relationship. I mean, every business, even if it's a little small business, should have a line of credit. You should have more than just a deposit relationship. You should be dealing with a lawyer or a law firm that can represent you and that has what I call the full quiver of abilities to represent you. They have enough lawyers and enough expertise. You should all run your business like you were going to take it public.
So that means audited books?
Yes, I believe in audited books because, number one, you're probably at least twice, perhaps 3 times better off with financial institutions if you have audited books because they believe the audited numbers a lot more than they believe your own house numbers.
Right.
And if the audited books are done by a big 6 firm or a large regional firm, they're even going to believe them more because they know that the books are going to adhere to GAAP, General Accepted Accounting Procedures. So you've got now good accounting, you've got good legal representation, you've got a good bank, you've got your mentors. Now you have to understand that you have to determine where do you fall in your own dream team. Are you Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside? Where are your strengths? Any founder, any CEO, any entrepreneur of even a little business, the primary job should be trying to find capital to grow the business, number 1, and 2, looking for opportunities to grow the business. I myself attend a lot of meetings in a month's time because I'm continuing to look at transactions, I'm continuing to look at opportunities because I want my growth to continue, whereas most of the people that are in business sit and, as I've already pointed out, they manage the company not to lose as opposed to win.
Right. I hired to my weaknesses. That's what I felt that was my early training, and then fortunately been able to hire people that probably could have replaced me.
Well, one of them did replace me.
Yeah, did they?
Yeah, one of my team is CEO of Great Western Resources now. In fact, I talked to him not too many days ago. He still bounces ideas off me, even though I'm gone. I'm still the largest single shareholder of the company. It's a fairly large public company. But and surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, as you just said. And that gets back to the comfort zone. You can't do that unless you're comfortable with yourself, because you're always going to be worried about what are these people going to do. If you have any sense of insecurity, that'll be very difficult for you to do. But I'm telling you, it's the best thing to do to grow your business.
I recall you saying you had 5 people that wanted your job at all times.
Yes, there were 5, sometimes more than 5, and one of them eventually got it.
And you liked them.
Yes,
they were breathing down your neck.
They made me toe the line. They made me a much better businessman than I might have been if I didn't have those 5 people. High performance people want that kind of ambiance. They want that because it's like a think tank. I mean, we would come up with ideas and bounce them around, and we would either decide to carry an idea to fruition or kill it within a matter of minutes, as opposed to thinking about it myself and going through all the machinations myself. I had the ability to bring in my people and brainstorm instead of going to a think tank.
Right. In fact, sports, again, is another good analogy along that line, in that golfers, most of them prefer to play with a better golfer. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
And I know you're an avid golfer.
Yes. I mean, my goal is to go down to be a scratch player and right now I'm a single-digit player, but I play with people that are better than I am. I just played a couple of days ago. A good friend of mine that's a 3 handicap, and I beat you a couple of days ago by 1 stroke when we played, and much to his chagrin, he's probably sick. We're going to send him a copy of this tape. Yes, I mean, hang around and do business and be with people that can get you to the next level.
All right, let's talk about building the perception, step 4.
Well, perception is reality, and if you follow the first steps that we've already talked about, people are going to think you're more successful than you are to begin with, and that's good.
Yes.
Your banks are going to have more confidence. Your potential joint venture partners are going to have more confidence. Everybody will have more confidence.
And they have to have confidence in you. You have to have confidence in yourself.
Absolutely, and if you'll let me share a story about perception is reality. You and I had dinner not too many months ago.
Yes.
and you told the maitre d', you told the hostess, you told the waiter, everybody to bring the check to you.
That's right, because I'd heard you had paid everywhere you went.
That's exactly right. And who did they bring the check to?
You.
They brought it to me.
So annoying.
Yes, and well, that just happened to me in Florida. Perception. I look successful, and
That's true.
A gentleman in Jacksonville, Florida, asked the maitre d', who do you think, there were 7 of us sitting all in suits in the morning for breakfast, who do you think ought to get the check? And she pointed to me. Him, and says, well, why? He says, well, he looks like he ought to get the check. He looks the most successful at the table. He looks like the boss. Perception is reality. Now, at that table, I wasn't the boss.
Wow.
The gentleman that was asking the question was the boss. But all his employees, to his credit, he had the grit to ask that question.
Yeah.
But, I mean, people want to be in business with people that are perceived to be successful.
And I think you've got to expand on this, because I notice you're not wearing a Rolex watch.
No, I'm wearing a $8 Swatch or $12 Swatch watch. I don't know if they...
and a lot of people think that it's the jewelry or something else, and that isn't it. What you're talking about is the inward strength and what?
Yeah, well, that's part of it. It's the how you carry yourself, but it's also how you dress.
Right.
I mean, nothing against Rolex watches, but really high-performance people not too many of them do wear Rolex watches. Because, I mean, everybody's got one. But it's how you dress, how you come across at a meeting, who takes control, how you travel, where you live. When I travel, I don't travel, and I travel a lot on planes. It would be a lot easier for me to wear a running suit on planes, but I don't travel like that because I don't know who I'm going to sit down next to. I don't know what business opportunity I'm going to have. It's how you're perceived. And there are many personal development speakers that are perceived to be very successful because the ambiance that they surround themselves with. I mean, Mr. Gates and Mr. Perot and Mr. Iacocca and those kind of gentlemen, and Mr. Scott more recently, are perceived in one way, and perception is reality. Health care deals now are brought to Rick Scott. I mean...
And this is the gentleman who used to work
that's
for
right.
you, as I recall.
Rick used to be my lawyer, and he, in the late 80s, went off on his own, and he has now made just a great deal of money, and he's one of the most successful corporate CEOs in America today.
I just read about him putting some deal together, which I thought was for multi-millions.
Billions. Well, his company, I think, will do about $15, $16, $17 billion in revenue. And he started with, now, this sounds like a lot of money, $125,000 life savings in 1988 when he went out on his own.
And this is 94.
Yep.
Late 94.
That's correct, and he has made a great deal of money. And but Rick, perception is reality. Even before he got to this point, he had said, by the way, his goal was to control the health industry in the United States.
Lofty goal.
That's right. And he didn't say by when.
Right.
He's 41 years old now.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, that gets back to, one, his comfort level. He felt comfortable. He had a high self-concept. He didn't set time limits for his goals. And he hung around with the people that could put him in the position that he could hit that kind of home run, and he has. He's been very successful. It's perception is reality. And what I would submit to the listeners, they can become the part in their business. They can become the successful adjunct to their business. They can become the successful arm to their business. If they think it and if they believe it, they will do it.
Right. And that's as a result of encountering rejection and being comfortable with the rejection, because during the obtaining of these rejections you also get some wins, and it puts you in a higher and higher level. Is that basically it?
Yes, that's basically it. But in addition to that, it's the idea that if you put yourself in positions where you're going to get anxiety, you become used to the anxiety, and anxiety ultimately disappears.
All right. What is the next step? Step 5, your Quantum Leap Action Plan growth. What is that?
Well, I mean, the Quantum Leap Action Plan is the plan that we do at the seminar for each attendee, but it's how we put together the specific objectives for the individual. It's how you maintain increasing growth as opposed to getting satiated and letting it flatten out. It's don't waste time on things you can't change. You know, I use the example, I'm not going to change my in-laws. I figured that out 20 plus years ago. Yet in business, we spend a great deal of time on things that we know we're not going to change. We either have somebody that works for us or is in our employ that does certain things the way we don't like them, yet we continue to go back and we try to change them. I mean, we're not going to change individuals. We're not going to change the way they think. So it's our job as the entrepreneur, as the leader, to develop a program around the people that we have. And if we can't do that, then we don't have the right people. It's developing an obsession, not just for ourselves, but for our people. I mean, you cannot grow a business geometrically in a quantum way unless your people are obsessed. They're in love with the idea. It's your job as the founder of the company, whether it's a grocery store or a real estate office, to develop that obsession, to work through that obsession and make sure that they have it. Because the idea is you must continue to grow. You have to grow. Now, it's also systematizing your organization. So you find out what works. Basically, high-performance people find out what works, and then they just do more of it. They try to do less of what doesn't work and more of what does work.
Very good.
Part of the action plan is knowing that you should investigate before you invest. I learned many, many years ago, I will reduce my losses in business, my losses in investing, if I do a lot of homework. In fact, I only make probably 2 or 3 investments a year. Yet we have people that spend more time on deciding where to go have dinner, where to go play golf, or where to go on a vacation than they do in some of the investment decisions. I hear people, have been called up to buy stocks on the telephone to make decisions. Now, this is, only caveat. It depends on how long you've had a relationship with your financial advisor, but with basically no homework. Right. That's not the way high-performance people do. Part of your growth plan is building your dream team that we've already talked about, and at the same time, understanding that your organization is going to be no better than the people you have. The 2 biggest leverages we have in life are other people and other people's money. Yes. And so that's how we develop that growth aspect.
And that's in a positive way.
Absolutely. I don't mean it in a negative way at all. It's a very positive way. The second part of the action plan is working capital, and everybody is concerned, where do I get money? Of course, you don't need money. I know, Donnie, because all that money you've got in the bank.
Yeah.
But everybody listening to this tape probably does need money. It's a matter of exposure. We've already talked about that I've made 300 financial presentations. I can guarantee, and there are very few guarantees I give, but there's somebody, someplace, somewhere on the face of the earth that will finance every funky idea that anybody that listens to this tape.
Make the presentation.
Make the presentations. It may be in Saipan, but if you want the deal done bad enough, you'll see enough people, you'll turn over, I should say, enough rocks. Because most of the companies that are listening to this tape cannot grow their business by retained earnings. They can't grow it fast enough through debt, because that means they're going to have to carry the debt service. And there's not enough equity in their organization to sell off to the public. So you're going to have to make a lot of financial presentations.
That's it. And again, you told me a story once about somebody that sent out 700 or so. What was that story?
I was asked, and it gets back to making presentations. I taught a course where I went to undergraduate school, Cal State University, Northridge. And I had 15 students. We were having a workshop at my home in Palos Verdes, and they were all down, and they felt bad that they haven't received the number of job offers that they thought they should. And so I had a young man there who was a Harvard graduate, a young man named Fidel Vargas. He happens to be the mayor of Baldwin Park outside Los Angeles, the youngest mayor in the United States. And I asked Fidel to step in front of the class, and I said, after asking every member of the class how many resumes they sent out, 3, 6, 12, the most anybody had sent out was 30. And I asked Fidel, how many resumes did you send out? And he says, 700, sir. And I said, how many job offers did you get? And he says, 1. Now, my class all looked very dejected, but say he really wanted a job, yes. Fidel Vargas. Right. He sent out 700. Right. Now, and just the logistics of putting 700 resumes together is fairly awesome. The same holds true for financial institutions. You have to give a lot of financial presentations.
And you went all over the world.
That's correct. Okay. Other than Antarctica, I've been to every continent pitching for capital, money, debt. Anything to grow the company. Okay. I've looked at virtually all the financial markets. You have to start with your own city, though. I can go to a phone book here in San Diego, and I can go to any industry, and I can find a half a dozen companies in any industry that's listening to this tape and find somebody that's beating the trend and doing very, very well and that has found capital to grow their business.
Very good.
There's no question about it. So, I mean, there's probably 500 financial institutions in San Diego County.
Let's regress a little bit. And you said that the primary job of the owner of the business or the CEO or the chairman is to search for capital. Is that right?
Search for capital, search for growth ideas, search for ways to make their business grow as fast as possibly can.
Okay. So that's why you were doing that at all times.
In my judgment, and not just my judgment, all the high-performance people that we've alluded to today, that's all they do. That's all the Gates, the Perot's, the Scully's, that's all they do. They look for opportunities to grow their business.
Right, and so they're not running their business.
Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. I don't know one high-performance person that runs his business on a day-to-day basis.
And you were in the energy business, but you didn't really know how to drill the wells or anything like that, or...
That's an understatement.
Oh.
I'm not an engineer, a geologist, or a physicist. I don't know how to drill the oil for the oil. I didn't know how to do any coal mining. I wasn't an engineer, a coal engineer. I didn't know anything about a construction pipeline. I've been in the real estate business. I've been in the entertainment business. I've been in the insurance business. I don't really know anything about any of those businesses. What I do know is how to grow them by either acquisition, internal cash flow, and going out and continuing to look at deals, and that's what I do now.
And you're out right now looking at deals, looking at other businesses to go into, and you don't care what kind of business it is. It doesn't make any difference to you.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me. There are some industries that are hotter than others, but I mean, it doesn't matter.
Okay. And what size businesses are you currently looking for yourself right now? Does that matter?
Well, I mean, as little as a few $100,000 and as much as many tens of millions.
Okay.
So it really doesn't matter.
And then you're going to apply these same principles to whatever that business is.
Absolutely.
And
That's
so
correct.
Anybody that comes to your seminar, doesn't matter what type of business they're in, what size it is, whether they really understand that business, if they're coming from, let's say, an outplacement agency and they're thinking about buying a local mini-mart, that doesn't make any difference as long as they apply the principles.
That's correct. The principles are universal. As Napoleon Hill said many, many decades before I ever thought of it, the principles for success are universal. They've been around since time began, since man first crawled out of a cave someplace. There is no new thought vis-a-vis being successful and growing your business. These are old precepts.
Your application is a lot different than anything that I'd ever heard from anybody. So your quantum growth ideas were, I believe, unique to you alone.
Well, I agree with that, but the basic precepts, because mine isn't just work harder, work smarter, it's work different and to think different. But I mean, people have been doing this since time began.
Oh, okay.
Now I've quantified it and I've put it in 7 steps, and I've lectured about it the last 10 or 15 years around the world. But it's not difficult. You've heard me say this before. I mean, if it was hard, as anybody that went to school with me would attest to, Peña couldn't have done it if it was too hard. So I would submit to anybody listening to the tapes that the Quantum Leap Action Plan is very doable, and you've seen me do it on dozens of occasions.
Yes, I sure have. Now let's talk about step 6. Pay yourself first. Every entrepreneur, every business owner I talk to, they're highly interested when I mention this, and this is what you teach. Tell us about that.
Well, it's not exactly how it sounds. Pay yourself first probably has different connotations to different people, but The one thing that I've learned, I'm on my third or fourth fortune, depending on how you want to categorize fortune. Through the economic cycles that I've been, I've seen people put off hitting the cash register, so to speak, and taking money out. They say, I'm going to put all my money back in my business so it'll grow that much better, that much quicker. I can't find investments that are growing as well as my own. Well, what happens is you get to the end of the cycle, two things happen. One, if and when you decide to sell, now you're at the end of the cycle, your business isn't worth as much. You've taken no money out, so you try to squeeze the last penny out of the business, and you can't. You have trouble selling it. Right. And I know a lot of these people that are listening to these tapes buy and sell businesses.
Yes, they do.
So my recommendation is that I would submit that you should pay yourself, take money out of the organization. Every time you make a little bit of money, take a little bit of money out. This does two things. Number one, you don't have to sell the business for as much when you get ready to sell it. And number two, you've benefited, in case you can't sell it, all through the cycle.
Why don't you tell the story about the meeting you were at where the people were sitting in the audience and they mentioned that they really ought to just walk from their business, but they just owned it too long and they couldn't.
I was on the dais for the Center for Entrepreneurial Management about a year and a few months ago, and we were going around and talking to the various entrepreneurs there, and one of the entrepreneurs had lamented that in the last 3+ years, 3.5 years, he had lost or eroded approximately 60% of the retained earnings, the net worth of the company, that had taken him 35 years to build up.
Wow.
And
that's sad.
It's very sad, but I mean it's very typical. And I commented to him, and he was in the mature industry, and I said that you don't need to be Einstein or Gates to figure out that you probably ought to just turn the key and close the business down. And he told me that he couldn't. He emotionally couldn't turn the key. Now, and that brings up an interesting point. We have two checkbooks in life and in business. We have an emotional checkbook and we have a financial checkbook. And it gets back to being comfortable with yourself, most people have trouble growing their business past the initial stages because they're short of cash in the emotional checkbook, not in the financial checkbook. It's how comfortable you feel with yourself. At the end of the day, being a high-performance, super successful person is all about self-esteem. And we have to do everything we humanly possibly can to develop that self-esteem. So, I mean, it's paying yourself first, and I don't mean just you. I mean from the chairman, from the founder, from the business owner, all the way down to the lowest employee.
So you share the wealth all the way down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe in even giving away equity to employees to make them part of the team. People don't work for me, they work with me. We're partners.
Right. Well, as you know, on my last company, I gave away 15% of the company to my top person. And actually, that was really, really smart. And you don't sell it. You give it. I remember you just saying that.
One of the biggest questions I'm always asked is, do you really mean give it, Dan?
Right.
Do you mean that you give them at a discount? And they ask me 15 different ways. The answer is give it free and clear. And then the second question I'm asked, well, what if I have to fire him 5 years from now? What if he leaves? Well, then he leaves with 5%, or he leaves with 2%, or he leaves with 10%. Being a minority shareholder, at least in the state of California, doesn't give you too many rights. So, I mean, it's not like they can disrupt the whole company just because somebody owns 2 or 5 or 10%. So, I mean, give it. But take the money out and get used to those higher lifestyles, higher ambiance.
All right, then step 7 is creating your exit strategy. Tell us about that.
Well, it's sad, but just as I have alluded to in step 6, where the individual has not taken money out of his company, and then when it comes to the time where he thinks he wants to sell it, normally people want to sell their business when they get ill, unfortunately. Most people's exit strategy is dropping dead. Yep. And, in fact, the insurance industry is the only industry that I'm aware of that really addresses exits properly. And, of course, they have an axe to grind, and I'm not against it, but they're trying to sell you insurance to pay your taxes. But plan for your exit strategy. There's a blanket statement I use, and, again, I don't give many guarantees or many blanket statements, but if you're in your 40s, your next economic cycle up, sell your business, because you may not be around for the next economic upturn. I hear people say, well, Dan, what am I going to do with the money? It's a lot better to have the money and have a problem on what to do with it than not to have the money and try to sell your business in a down cycle.
Right. And then lots of times, as you stated, they just kind of step aside. I mean, they don't want to sell it at the lower price, and they just get locked in.
That's absolutely right. But if you acted as you were going to go public from the very beginning, you've got audited books, you've got your house in order, and you've had an active PR program, if you will, that you've continued to look for deals, you've got a conduit of things happening in your business, it'll be a lot easier for you to sell it, as opposed to waking up one day because you find out that you've got ulcers or, God forbid, you've got something worse wrong with you, and then trying to sell it.
So basically, your advice to every business owner or even those contemplating into going into business is to really go in with the idea of either selling it or going public or passing it down to their children or employees or something, but plan a strategy from the very beginning.
Absolutely. Nothing's forever. Glory is fleeting. Virtually everyone that I know that's a high-performance person, with very few exceptions, the Ford family and a few families like that have built companies that last, beyond their lifetime. There's a time to buy a company. There's a time to sell a company. There's a time to buy a business. There's a time to sell a business. And I would submit that the people should focus in on their exit strategy. Maybe the exit strategy is to sell the employees and some of their children, but to focus on that and then have their plans directed towards that exit.
Dan, I thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Don.
Quantum leap. What a concept. How can you apply this information in your business? Remember, information is not enough. It takes action to make your quantum leap. How are you going to look at your business in a new way? To contact Dan Pena, call 1-800-592-6886 or fax 713-933-6166. You can reach VR at 1-800-377-8722. This concludes this edition of the VR Mentor Series.